The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager. All right, joining us now to discuss the crypto markets and more is Marketgauge Managing Director Michele Schneider in New Mexico. Welcome, Michele. So what are some of the fundamentals you see leading to this pullback in the crypto markets today?
Well, it could just be some good profit taking, because what's so interesting, and also a little bit of fear of what's happened here with this bill that has passed, the crypto bill that has passed, which will actually tax especially the miners, would tax them exactly the way that traders would be taxed and that exchanges would be taxed. And that has created a little bit of fear, I think, that some of the miners that are trying to come back into the United States will actually leave, possibly going into Canada. That could have some overlying effect, but I've also seen that there's been big whale buying here, which generally turns out to be bullish. So it's if we go back before I left for vacation, which was so interesting, because when we talked, actually right before I left, Bitcoin was trading between 33 and 34, and it was actually quite dull. And now here we are between 44 and 46. So even though we've come off, we look back just a little bit, and I know memories tend to be very short, we're actually up pretty good since then. So I wouldn't necessarily get too concerned unless we really start to fall and break back down, let's say under 40,000, which 4041, which was the pivotal number we had to clear 3 weeks ago.
Michele, was there more?
I just wanted to follow up with you on your point. Sorry, I just wanted to follow up with you on your point on the infrastructure bill. It's kind of interesting because maybe that's affecting the market, but if you look at the few days after, the infrastructure bill, the provision went through the Senate, Bitcoin was actually up around 7%. So my observation is that it's not the market isn't really reacting to the infrastructure bill, and I was just curious to hear more of your thoughts on that, because it seems like for something that there was so much commotion about and so much fear over, when the language went through, the market reacted in a more muted way than I think a lot of people expected.
Well, it also could be, and you're right, Emily, I mean, definitely the initial reaction was up, but we also know that the initial reaction is not necessarily what happens over the long run. But with that said, it sort of snuck in the language about the taxes in that infrastructure bill. It was announced, but you wonder how many people actually really paid attention. I even had to comb through it to see what the language was precisely related to crypto. So again, we've come off from the high of what we saw on this recent rally, but we're still just basically seeing the dust settle at this point. And from a technical standpoint, since we couldn't get through this 46 for very long, we actually, if you look at the charts, it does look a little bit like maybe if the 44 breaks, we could see 40 again, but that I think would be a healthy correction and possibly a place to get back in if you're not already in it from lower levels.
Nonetheless, Michele, I mean, it just seems that there was less to this rally than we've made it out to be in a lot of ways, just because, again, as you were mentioning, as we've talked about as well, lower volumes. And also, you talked about the whales that are getting involved. Is it possible that these whales are doing things in crypto that have little to do with bullishness or bearishness, but more, let's say, moving around money here and there, primarily because of regulatory issues that they may be facing? I'm thinking of a couple of very large exchanges in Asia, which are right now facing some heat and are moving their coins around, and it looks like whale buying. So is that something that could be happening here, where the market is sort of fooled into thinking there's a rally happening, and then it doesn't go to fruition? There isn't enough support for it, and then you have that pullback, and that pullback is not necessarily a bullish sign or a dip to buy in, but a worrisome sign.
Well, of course, anything is possible, but just in the world of trading in general, when you have a low volume, first of all, we have to understand that it is the summer. And generally, I mean, if you look at the overall stock market, the volumes have been extremely low, except for pockets here and there. So, of course, anything is possible. But another thing that's been happening in the crypto world, which is very interesting this week, is that some of the altcoins, most of them were drawn down to support levels along with what would happen with Bitcoin. But there's a couple of large cap projects that have done very well. One being Polkadot, which is down today, but actually reached on Monday new all-time highs. And the other one is Solana, which is actually up to another new high as we speak. When I looked last, it was trading at like 76.60. And these are two of the top cryptocurrencies by market cap. They're actually position number 9 and number 10. And so, you know, they're kind of like blockchain, Ethereum, DeFi, and each project has its own features. But we're seeing sort of a rotation as more interest comes into some of these other altcoins. And so we're looking at Bitcoin, of course, as the granddaddy, but it's also really fascinating. And I think that's what makes this space exciting, but also very confusing, is when you start to look at it, all these altcoins, what starts to take the headlines. And of course, right now, it looks more like Solana today is the one to keep an eye on.
Michele, I'm curious, how are you investing in these altcoins?
Well, we actually bought some Bitcoin last week. We started a little crypto fund that we've been trading lightly. So we're actually buying real coin. But of course, we also, for a lot of our clients, have always done some of the more ancillary ways to trade it, like through Square or Riot or whatever. But they haven't been performing as well traditionally as when we first got started. And unfortunately, right before I left, I wanted to buy COIN, but I left on vacation, so we didn't.
Do you think
but
Solana will overtake Ethereum?
I don't know. I would not be able to give you a good answer on that at this point. But let's watch Ethereum too. I mean, it's kind of like Bitcoin. It's the grandma to the granddad. And so if it holds 3,000, I think that would be a good sign. Maybe it needs to get back through 3,250. I don't know if Solana's big enough as market cap down really at 9 and 10 to overtake Ethereum. But of course, as we know in this game, anything is possible.